A quiet librarian breaking her own rules did the one thing her training never covered. She saved the life of the man who terrorized her city, and in doing so, became the only person he would ever trust. Her name was Jessica. For 5 years, her world was the quiet hum of the reading room and the precise order of the Dewey Decimal System. Then, on a Tuesday night, 10 minutes after closing, the door to the Charlesville Public Library crashed open, and a man stumbled in, bleeding from a wound he shouldn't have survived. He was a ghost in a $2,000 suit, a man whose name the city whispered in fear. And with one desperate act of mercy, Jessica would inherit every one of his enemies. The man collapsed against the circulation desk, leaving a dark, slick smear on the polished oak. His breath came in ragged, wet gasps. Jessica's training, a forgotten semester of community first aid, screamed at her to call 911. But another instinct, deeper and colder, told her that an ambulance would be a death sentence. The wound was a precise, ugly puncture just below his ribs, the kind made by a narrow blade, not a random act of violence. Her hands moved before her mind could protest. She grabbed the clean linen towels kept for polishing the display cases. Applying pressure, she felt the warmth of his blood seep through the fabric instantly. His eyes, a sharp, lucid green despite the pain, locked onto hers. "Don't call anyone," he managed, each word costing him. "They're watching the hospitals." Jessica knew of him then, not by name but by reputation. Charlesville had two economies, the one of taxes and commerce and the one that flowed through the shadows. This man was whispered about in news reports that never quite named him, referenced in police press conferences about ongoing investigations. He was a specter, Lorenzo Morty, and he was dying on her floor. The library was a tomb of silence. The only light came from her desk lamp and the exit signs. Every shadow in the towering bookshelves seemed to move. "I need to get you out of sight," she said, her voice astonishingly steady. He was too heavy to move far. Then she remembered the Beecher vault. The Charlesville Historical Collection was housed in a restricted, climate-controlled vault in the library's basement, built in the 1950s. It required a keycard and a 6-digit code, knowledge held only by the head librarian and Jessica, his assistant. It was a windowless chamber of reinforced concrete, designed to protect fragile first editions from fire and flood. Tonight, it would protect a man from other men. Somehow she got him to his feet. He leaned on her, his weight almost buckling her knees as she half-dragged, half-walked him toward the staff elevator. Each step was an agony of slowness. The elevator's descent felt like it took an hour. When the vault door hissed open, she guided him to a clear space on the cold floor between archival boxes. Working under the vault's sterile LED lights, Jessica became a machine of efficiency. Her first aid kit from the staff lounge was rudimentary, but it had gauze, antiseptic, and medical tape. She packed the wound as best she could, creating a thick, clumsy bandage. The bleeding slowed to a seep. His breathing even, but his skin was clammy and pale. Shock. "You need a doctor," she stated, sitting back on her heels. "No doctors," he repeated, his voice a thread. "You've done enough." His gaze swept over her, taking in her cardigan, her sensible shoes, the reading glasses still perched in her hair. Why? It was the question she'd been avoiding. The rulebook was clear: secure the premises, call security, then the police. She had broken every protocol. "You asked me not to," she said simply, which was only part of the truth. The larger truth was that in his desperate animal eyes she hadn't seen a monster. She'd seen a living thing in pain. The library was a sanctuary. He had stumbled into hers. For the next 2 hours she monitored him. He drifted in and out of consciousness. In his lucid moments, he was unnervingly alert, his eyes cataloging every detail of the vault, every sound from the building's old pipes. He told her nothing, and she asked for nothing. It was during one of his restless sleeps that she allowed herself to truly panic. She crept back upstairs to the main floor. Peering through the front door's narrow windows, she saw the rain-slicked street was empty. But then, a black sedan with tinted windows turned the corner slowly, prowling. It paused for a long moment in front of the library before continuing on. It made the circuit twice more in the next 30 minutes. They were looking for him. When she returned to the vault, he was awake, watching the door. "They're out there," she said, her bravery fraying. He nodded slowly, a grim confirmation. "They will search every logical place. A clinic, a safe house, an associate's apartment, a public library." He almost smiled. "Not logical." "Who are they?" "The people who did this," he said, gesturing weakly to his side. "A business disagreement turned personal." Jessica understood the euphemism. She was now an accessory to that business. Her life, her quiet, ordered life of catalog requests and reading clubs had vaporized in the space of an hour. The weight of it pressed down on her, a physical force. She had hidden a wounded lion, and now the hunters were at the gate, and the lion, for all his power, was helpless. As the night stretched toward 3 a.m., a new fear took root. What happened when morning came? When the day staff arrived? She couldn't keep a crime boss in the rare books vault. He needed proper medical care, and she needed to not go to prison for obstruction of justice or worse. She was formulating a desperate, half-formed plan involving her own car and a hospital 2 counties over when his phone buzzed. A single, muted vibration from the inside pocket of his ruined suit jacket. He fumbled for it, his movements weak. The screen illuminated his face as he read the message. Every trace of color drained from what was left. "What is it?" Jessica asked, her own fear spiking. He looked at her, and for the first time she saw genuine, unguarded terror in his eyes. "They didn't just come for me," he whispered, his voice cracking. "They took my son. They have my boy." The statement hung in the chilled air of the vault. The stakes had just exploded. This was no longer a matter of hiding a man from his rivals. It was a countdown. Jessica realized with a sinking finality that her involvement wasn't over. She was now the only link between a wounded kingpin and the only thing in the world he loved. And the men outside in the black sedan, the men who had his child, would tear the city apart to find him before he could respond. She was in the middle of a war she never knew existed, and the first battle was about to be fought in her silent, sacred library at dawn. The word son changed everything. The calculus of risk in the vault shifted instantly. This was no longer about sheltering a wounded predator. It was about a child. Jessica's hands, which had been trembling, went still. "How old is he?" she asked, her voice low and clear in the sterile air. 8, Lorenzo Morty breathed out, the number a prayer and a curse. "His name is Leo." He tried to sit up, a groan escaping his clenched teeth. The makeshift bandage darkened anew. "I need my phone. I need to call." "Call who?" Jessica interrupted, a sudden, sharp pragmatism overriding her fear. "The people who did this are presumably the ones who have him. Calling your usual people might tell them exactly where you are." She had read enough mystery novels, seen enough thrillers. Paranoia was now her only guide. He stared at her, a flicker of respect in his pained gaze. "You think like a soldier." "I think like a librarian who needs to get a bleeding man and a kidnapped boy out of this nightmare without anyone else dying," she corrected. "Can you walk?" "Not far, just to my car." He shook his head, a gesture of defeat that seemed alien on him. "Not yet. The blood loss another hour, maybe 2. He looked at the vault's single heavy door. "They will not look here, but they will watch my assets, my known contacts. They have Leo to draw me out. They expect me to come charging, weak and desperate. That is how they will kill me." Jessica began to pace the small space between archival boxes. The logic was horrifyingly clear. This was a trap. Lorenzo was the primary target and his son was the bait. If he emerged too soon, he'd die and the boy would likely still be lost. If he waited too long, the kidnappers might grow impatient or worse. They needed information. They needed a plan. And they needed it before the sun rose and the library staff arrived at 7 a.m. "Do you have anyone? One person who wasn't at your business meeting tonight? Someone they wouldn't expect?" Jessica asked. Lorenzo was silent for a long moment. There is one, my driver Anatoly, he was off tonight, sick. He is old, loyal to me, not to the business. He gave a weak, pained cough. He lives above the garage behind my home, a separate building. They may not be watching it. It was a thread, impossibly thin. Jessica's mind raced. She could not call from the library phone. Her own cell was a basic pay-as-you-go model, virtually untraceable to anyone sophisticated. But going out there to the home of a crime boss while armed men hunted for him, it was suicide. She looked at Lorenzo Morty, the fearsome specter of Charlesville, now pale and shivering on the floor of her vault. He was looking at a photograph on his phone, his thumb stroking the screen. The face of a smiling, gap-toothed boy with his father's green eyes looked back. The raw, human agony on Lorenzo's face decided her. Give me the address. Tell me what to look for. A key, a code, something only Anatoly would know. He instructed her with the precise, clipped detail of a man used to being obeyed. The address was in the gated Lockwood Heights neighborhood. The code to the side gate was his son's birthday, 082015. Anatoly's apartment was above the four-car garage. Tell him Leo's night fell. He will understand. He will give you what is in the safe behind the icon of Saint Michael. What is in the safe? Jessica asked, already pulling her coat on over her blood-stained clothes. A phone, a clean one, money, and a list of numbers. One of them is for a man named Silas. He is independent. He finds people. Tell him what has happened. He will need proof of life. The kidnappers will send a demand. They must. Lorenzo's voice was fatting again. Do not use your car. It is too visible here. Take the bus. Walk. Be a ghost. Jessica nodded, a strange calm settling over her. The task was impossible, which made it simple. There were only the steps. Leave the library unseen. Get across the city. Retrieve the package. Contact the finder. And do it all before dawn. She disabled the library's security system for the staff door, a trick the previous head librarian had shown her during a fire drill. She slipped out into the alley, a shadow in the damp, pre-dawn gloom. The black sedan was not in sight. She walked 6 blocks, her heart hammering against her ribs, before hailing a night bus that smelled of stale coffee and loneliness. Lockwood Heights was a world away from the downtown library district. Mansions sat behind high walls and wrought iron gates. Lorenzo's property was at the end of a cul-de-sac. The house was a dark monolith against the gray sky. No lights shone. No cars were parked nearby. It felt like a tomb. Her hands were ice as she punched the code into the side gate's keypad. It buzzed open. She moved quickly across the manicured lawn, feeling exposed under the vast, empty sky. The garage was a separate stone building. A narrow exterior staircase led to an apartment door. She knocked softly, then again more insistently. After a long minute, a light flicked on. The door opened a crack secured by a chain. An elderly man with a weathered face and wary eyes peered out. Go away, he grumbled, his accent thick. Leo's night fell, Jessica whispered, the phrase feeling absurd. The man's eyes widened. The door closed, the chain rattled, and it swung fully open. Anatoly pulled her inside, his gaze darting past her to the dark grounds. Where is he? Is he alive? He's alive, he's hidden. He sent me for the safe. Without another word, Anatoly went to a small wall niche holding a dramatic icon of the Archangel Michael slaying a dragon. He pressed the side, and the entire panel swung open, revealing a compact safe. He worked the combination, his hands steady. Inside were bundles of cash, a slim black phone, and a single sheet of paper with a short list of handwritten numbers. He handed her the phone and the list. The money, take it, you may need it. Silas is the 3rd number. He is expensive. He is good. Tell him Anatoly vouches. Now go. The house is being watched from a distance. I feel it. They have not come here because they think it is empty. Do not come back. Jessica stuffed the phone and money into her bag. As she turned to leave, Anatoly caught her arm. His grip was surprisingly strong. You are the librarian, he stated, as if recognizing her from a description. He spoke of you once, said the quiet woman in the library with the intelligent eyes was the only person in this city who never looked at him with fear or greed. Keep him alive, for the boy. She fled, retracing her steps, the weight of the phone and the cash feeling like lead in her bag. The first streaks of dawn were painting the eastern sky when she let herself back into the silent library. She went straight to the vault. Lorenzo was awake, propped against a box. The color had slightly returned to his face. He took the phone as if it were a lifeline. No trouble. Anatoly says the house is watched from a distance. He knows. Lorenzo powered on the phone. It had a single contact list. He dialed the third number and put it on speaker. It rang 5 times before a voice answered, deep and devoid of emotion. Silas. This is Morty. My son, Leo, was taken tonight from his mother's home in Brookfield. The security detail is dead. I have been incapacitated. I need you to find him. Anatoly vouches. There was a pause. The sound of a keyboard clicked in the background. Retainer is $200,000. Non-refundable. I will need all details. The boy's schedule, the mother's name, the make and model of the vehicles involved, any known conflicts. And proof of life from the takers within the next 12 hours or the operation changes to recovery, not rescue. The fee doubles. You will have the money. The details are coming. I will get you proof of life. Lorenzo's voice was pure steel now, the command returning. I will start the clock. Send the information to the secure line on this device. The call ended. The reality of the financial scale was dizzying. $200,000 just to start looking. Jessica watched as Lorenzo began typing names, addresses, and schedules into the phone with furious focus. His world was one of terrifying magnitudes. As he worked, Jessica's own phone, buried in her pocket, vibrated. A local news alert. She opened it and her blood froze. The headline read, "Police investigate suspicious activity at Charlesville Public Library." The brief article stated an alarm had been remotely triggered and reset overnight, and a patrol car had been dispatched to find nothing amiss. However, a source noted unusual vehicular traffic in the area around the time of the alarm. They were closer than Anatoly thought. The hunters weren't just watching Lorenzo's house. They were canvassing the entire area where he disappeared. The library was on their radar. She showed Lorenzo the screen. His expression hardened. They are methodical. They will eliminate every possibility. A public building is a low probability, but not zero. They may come to ask questions when it opens. We have to move you before then, Jessica said. But you can't walk out and I can't carry you, and we can't call an ambulance. Lorenzo looked at her, a dangerous idea forming in his eyes. Then we don't leave. We make them see exactly what they expect to see. A normal day at the library, with you, the librarian, doing your job, and me, somewhere they would never think to look in plain sight. Where? Jessica asked, dread coiling in her stomach. The periodical reading room, the one with the high-backed private study carrels. You get me to one. I sit. I read a newspaper. You bring me coffee. I am just a patron who came in early. If they send someone inside to look, they will look for a hiding man, not a reading man. It was audacious. It was insane. It relied on the sheer arrogance of his plan to hide in the most visible way possible. But with less than 2 hours before the first staff member arrived, they had no better option. Somehow, with him leaning heavily on her and using a book cart for support, they made the agonizing journey from the basement vault to the main floor's periodical room. They chose a carrel in the back corner, shrouded in morning shadow. He sank into the chair, sweat beading on his forehead from the effort. Jessica arranged a newspaper in front of him and placed a pair of reading glasses she found in a lost-and-found box into his hand. Don't move, she instructed. Don't sleep. If anyone comes, you are Mr. Evans, a retired professor with insomnia. You come here every morning. I will vouch for it. He gave a faint, pained nod. Jessica, he said as she turned to go. She looked back, Thank you. Whatever happens, my son owes you his life. I owe you more. She had no answer. She simply walked away, back to the circulation desk, and began the normal morning routine of booting up computers and unlocking doors, her every sense screaming. She was now an actor in a play where a missed cue meant death. At 7:05 a.m., Gary from custodial services arrived, whistling. At 7:20, Marcy, the children's librarian, came in, complaining about the traffic. The library came to life with its normal, mundane rhythms. At 7:45, the front doors opened to the public. An elderly man wandered in for the morning paper. A student hurried to the computers, and two men in dark, casual jackets entered. They moved with a controlled, scanning purpose. Their eyes swept over the reading room, past the man sitting quietly in the corner, Carol, and locked onto Jessica behind the desk. They approached, their smiles not reaching their eyes. The taller one leaned on the desk. "Good morning. We're with the city's building security audit team. Had a blip on the alarm system here last night. We just need to ask a few questions and take a quick look around. Won't take but a minute." Jessica's blood turned to ice, but her face arranged itself into a mask of polite, slightly confused helpfulness. It was the same expression she used for patrons asking for books that didn't exist. "Oh, the alarm," she said, with a light laugh. "That old thing goes off if a pigeon looks at it sideways. The police already came by last night. They said it was a glitch." The taller man, the one doing the talking, didn't smile back. His eyes were like chips of flint. "We'd like to see the security logs anyway, protocol, and take a walk through the stacks. Make sure no one holed up in here." His gaze drifted past her, scanning the open floor. "Of course," Jessica said, her voice steady. "Let me just get the log binder from the office. Gary," she called to the custodian who was mopping the entrance, "these gentlemen are from the city. Can you show them the downstairs meeting rooms while I pull the paperwork?" It was a gamble, sending them away with a witness, away from the periodical room. Gary, oblivious and eager to help, nodded. "Right this way, fellas." As the two men followed Gary toward the basement stairs, throwing one last assessing look around the main floor, Jessica's legs nearly buckled. She forced herself to walk, not run, to the administrative office. She grabbed a random binder labeled HVAC maintenance and took a deep, shuddering breath. She had bought minutes at most. From the office window, she could see a sliver of the periodical room. Lorenzo hadn't moved. The newspaper was raised, his hand steady. But she saw the tension in his shoulders, the unnatural stillness. He was listening to every sound. The men returned from the basement after 10 agonizing minutes. "All clear down there," the talkative one said. "Now about those logs." She handed him the binder. He flipped through it, his eyes scanning columns of meaningless temperature readings and filter change dates. It wouldn't hold up to real scrutiny, but it looked official. His partner, a silent, bulky man, was staring toward the periodical room. He took a few steps in that direction. "We should check the upper floors," the silent man said, his voice a low rumble. "The upper floors are closed for asbestos abatement," Jessica blurted, the lie coming smoothly. "Sealed off since last month. City ordinance. You should have the notice in your audit file." She looked at them expectantly, selling the fiction with wide-eyed sincerity. The two men exchanged a glance. The lie had the texture of truth, specific, bureaucratic, boring. The silent one looked frustrated. His eyes lingered on the periodical room, then swept over the other patrons. The elderly man, the student, the man in the carrel. He saw nothing out of place. Finally, the talkative one closed the binder. "All right, thanks for your cooperation. We'll be in touch if we have more questions." They left, the doors swinging shut behind them. Jessica waited a full 5 minutes, until she saw their black sedan pull away from the curb, before she allowed herself to exhale. She walked calmly to the periodical room and pretended to straighten magazines on a rack near Lorenzo's carrel. "They're gone," she murmured without looking at him. "They will be back," he whispered back, the newspaper not lowering. They are not city auditors, they are Varga's men. I recognized the shorter one. His name is Kozlov, he is a cleaner. They did not believe you, but they had no proof. Next time they will bring proof. The name Varga meant nothing to Jessica, but the title cleaner sent a fresh wave of dread through her. What do? We wait for the demand, and we get me stronger. I need antibiotics, painkillers, supplies. He finally lowered the paper. His face was ashen. The effort of maintaining the charade had cost him. There is a discreet doctor. He will not ask questions, but he will not come here. We must go to him. Tonight. The idea of moving him again seemed impossible, but staying was a death sentence. They were trapped in a narrowing window. At 9 a.m., Lorenzo's clean phone buzzed with an encrypted message. It was from Silas the Finder. It read, "Preliminary sweep indicates professional grab. 2 vehicles, switched plates, no traffic cam hits on primary routes. Pattern suggests holding within a 3-hour drive. Waiting for proof of life to triangulate further. Clock is ticking." Lorenzo's jaw tightened. He typed a response. Understood, standing by. The morning dragged on. Jessica performed her duties like an automaton, checking out books, answering questions, all while her nerves screamed. Every time the door opened, she flinched. Marcy asked if she was feeling okay. She blamed a migraine. At 11:17, the demand came, not to Lorenzo's phone, but as an email to Jessica's public library work address. The sender was a random string of letters. The subject line, "For Mr. Evans." The body contained no text, only an audio file. With shaking hands, Jessica downloaded it onto a library computer, transferred it to a USB drive, and brought it to Lorenzo in the periodical room, handing him an earpiece under the guise of returning a lost item. He plugged it in and pressed play. His face, already pale, went absolutely white. A young, trembling voice filled his ear. "Papa, it's me. They said to tell you I'm okay. They want the ledger, the real one. They said you have 24 hours, they said." The boy's voice broke into a sob and the audio cut off. There was a muffled sound, then a new voice, cold and digitally altered. "Morty, the boy is unharmed for now. We have the mother, we have the son, you have the book. The location of the exchange will be sent in 12 hours. Come alone. If we see anyone, if we sense a trap, we send you pieces of your family. You know we will." The audio ended. Lorenzo ripped the earbud out. His hands were fists, knuckles white. The raw, violent agony was back in his eyes, but beneath it was a terrifying, calculating fury. "They have Sophia, my ex-wife. They were supposed to be safe, in a different state." "The ledger?" Jessica asked. "It is not a book of accounts," he said, his voice hollow. "It is a record. Every payment, every official on my payroll, every judge, every police captain, 2 city councilmen. It is the skeleton of my entire operation. With it, they don't just take my territory. They own the city. They can dismantle everything I've built from the inside out or use it to control it." He was being asked to trade the empire that protected him for his family. But handing it over would leave him defenseless and marked for death by every corrupt official named within. It was a checkmate with blood as the currency. "Do you have it?" Jessica whispered. "It is not in a safe," he said. "It is somewhere only I can access, a place no one would connect to me." He looked at her, a desperate plan forming. "I need you to get it." "Me? Why me?" "Because they will be watching every person I have ever associated with, every lieutenant, every driver, every mistress. They will not be watching a librarian from the Charlesville Public Library, and because the location is here." The meaning dawned on her, absurd and terrifying. In the Asterisk Library. In the Beecher Vault, in a specific archival box, mislabeled as 19th century parish land surveys. I placed it there 3 years ago. The only place I am known to visit that is not connected to my business. I come to read, to think. It was my one neutral ground. Jessica felt the world tilt. Her sanctuary, her place of order, had been a secret vault for a criminal empire's most dangerous secret for years. The violation was profound, but it was also their only hope. What does it look like? A single, thick, black leather-bound journal. No markings. The pages are coded. Bring it to me. And Jessica, if anything happens to me, you take that book to the phone number on the first page. It is a federal prosecutor who has been trying to flip me for a year. It will be your only protection. The weight of the trust and the danger was crushing. She nodded, unable to speak. She waited for the lunch hour when foot traffic was lowest and returned to the vault. Her hands trembled as she located the box labeled Parish Surveys, 1801-899. She pulled it from the shelf. It was heavy. Inside, among genuine, yellowed land deeds, lay the black journal. It felt ominous, like a live grenade. She slipped it into a padded mailer and concealed it in her tote bag. As she emerged from the basement, she saw Marcy at the front desk, talking to a police officer. Her heart stopped. The officer was showing Marcy a photo on his phone. Marcy shook her head, then pointed toward the periodical room. They were back, and this time they had a badge. Jessica moved quickly, intercepting the officer before he could reach the reading room. "Officer, can I help you?" He was young with a serious face. "Ma'am, we're following up on a missing persons report. A child. We're showing his photo around the neighborhood." He turned the phone screen to her. It was Leo, the same smiling, gap-toothed boy from Lorenzo's phone. The report was real, filed by the boy's mother before she was taken. Jessica's professional mask was her armor. She looked at the photo, letting genuine concern show. "Oh, that's terrible. I haven't seen him, but I'll certainly keep an eye out. Would you like to put up a flyer?" The officer nodded, handing her one. His eyes swept the room. "You've been here all morning. See anything unusual?" "Just the usual Tuesday crowd," she said, her voice even. She gestured with the flyer. "I'll put this on the community board." He thanked her and moved on, walking through the periodical room. He paused at Lorenzo's carol. Jessica watched, her breath trapped in her chest. The officer leaned down, saying something. Lorenzo lowered the newspaper and looked up, his expression one of polite, elderly confusion. He said a few words, shook his head, and returned to his paper. The officer moved on. He had passed the test, but the presence of a real police investigation changed everything. It added a layer of legitimate scrutiny they couldn't bluff away. When the library closed at 6 p.m., they were alone again. Lorenzo could now walk, slowly and with pain, but he was mobile. Jessica had secured a first aid kit from a pharmacy, along with over-the-counter antibiotics and strong painkillers. It was a risk, but less than the untreated wound. In the vault, she helped him change the bandage. The wound was inflamed, angry red at the edges. Infection was setting in. The doctor was no longer an option for tonight. They couldn't risk the movement. They were stuck. Lorenzo took the black ledger from her bag, his hands almost reverent. He didn't open it. "This is my life, and my death warrant," he looked at her. "You should leave, Jessica. Take some of the money from Anatoly and go. You have done more than anyone could ask." "And what happens to Leo?" she asked quietly. He had no answer. He would go to the exchange, ledger in hand, and be slaughtered. His son would likely be killed anyway. The thought was unbearable. "There has to be another way," Jessica said, her mind racing. "You can't just give them what they want. They'll kill you all. What if we give them asterisk a asterisk ledger, but not asterisk the asterisk ledger?" Lorenzo stared at her. "A forgery. You said the pages are coded. Could you create a duplicate, with enough truth to be believable but with false keys? Names that lead nowhere, or to people who are already enemies of this Varga." A spark ignited in his eyes. It was a desperate, brilliant gamble. "It would take hours, and I would need my codes. They are not written down, they are here." He tapped his temple. "We have 12 hours until they send the location. Can you do it?" "I can try." He opened the ledger, revealing pages of what looked like gibberish, strings of numbers, dates, and seemingly random words. To him, it was a clear map. He pointed to a shelf. "Get me a blank journal and pens." Jessica found a high-quality, empty leather-bound journal in the library's gift shop. For the next 6 hours, Lorenzo Morty, crime boss, worked like a scholar under the vault lights. He transcribed, he calculated, he fabricated. Sweat beaded on his forehead from fever and concentration. Jessica brought him water, kept watch, and felt a strange, surreal camaraderie with this man rewriting his own doom. At 1 a.m., he sat back, exhausted. "It is done. It will pass a first inspection. It points to a warehouse on the docks that has been empty for years and implicates 2 of Varga's own allies. If they act on it, it will start a war within their own ranks." He had created a weapon of confusion. It was their only shot. The real ledger needed to disappear. Lorenzo looked at it, then at Jessica. "You know what this is now. You know what it can do. I cannot keep it. If I live, I will never need it again. If I die," he handed it to her. "You decide, burn it or use it, but do not let them have it." She took the heavy book, the weight of its secrets immense. She hid it in a different, forgotten box deep in the vault, one labeled Defunct Library Card Catalogs, 1951-970. At 2 a.m., the location came through. The old Hamilton granary on the industrial east side. Abandoned, isolated, perfect for a murder. It was time. Lorenzo strapped the forged ledger to his chest under a fresh shirt Jessica had brought from a thrift store. He checked the small, sleek pistol Anatoly had included in the safe, a weapon that felt alien in Jessica's library. His movements were stiff but purposeful. The fever still burned in him, but his eyes were clear and deadly. "This is where you stay," he said to her, his voice leaving no room for argument. "You wait here. If I am not back by sunrise, you call the number in the real ledger. Then you forget any of this ever happened." Jessica shook her head. "You can't go alone. You can barely stand. They'll cut you down before you see Leo. You need a distraction, a second set of eyes." "It is too dangerous." "It's all too dangerous," she hissed. "I'm already in it. My face is on their radar now from the auditors. If you fail, they'll come looking for anyone who helped you. That's me. My only chance is for you to succeed, so let me help." He studied her, this quiet woman who had become his unlikely general. Finally, he nodded. "You will be the lookout, at a distance. You see anything wrong, more cars, snipers on the roof, you call this phone once. Then you run. Do not try to be a hero." They left the library like ghosts, using the staff entrance and moving through back alleys. Jessica drove her own innocuous sedan, parked 3 blocks from the granary as he instructed. He slipped into the shadows, moving toward the vast, dark structure alone. Jessica watched from behind the wheel, her heart a drum in the silence. The granary loomed against the night sky, a monument to decay. She saw a single light flicker on in a second-floor office window. This was it. The exchange, the trap, the endgame. And she was the only one watching, the only witness to whatever horror or miracle was about to unfold inside those crumbling walls. The fate of a child, a father, and a city hung in the balance, and all she had was a cheap phone and a view from the shadows. The seconds stretched into an eternity. Jessica watched the granary's single-lit window like a hawk, her finger poised over the phone's call button. The silence from the building was absolute, more terrifying than any sound. Then a sharp, flat crack split the night. Not a car backfiring, a gunshot. It was followed by 2 more in rapid succession. Jessica's breath caught. The plan was unraveling. She pressed the call button once, sending the abort signal to Lorenzo's phone. She waited, counting to 10, her eyes scanning for movement. No one ran out. No lights flared. Nothing. Her promise to run warred with the image of the little boy in the photo. Leo. She thought of Lorenzo, feverish and wounded, walking into an ambush. She thought of her quiet life, already shattered. If she drove away now, she would spend the rest of her days wondering if she could have changed the outcome. She got out of the car. The cold night air bit through her coat. Moving on instinct, she circled the block, approaching the granary from the blind side opposite the main entrance. There was a rusted service door, partially off its hinges. She squeezed through the gap into overwhelming darkness and the smell of rot and old grain. Her ears strained, then voices muffled but angry echoing from above. "You think we're stupid, Morty? This is garbage." A thud like something heavy being thrown. A child's whimper quickly stifled. Jessica crept forward, finding a metal staircase. Each step was an agony of potential noise. She climbed to a catwalk that overlooked the vast, empty main floor. Below, in a pool of light from a single construction lamp, was the scene. Lorenzo stood, his posture stiff with pain, hands slightly raised. 3 men surrounded him. One held a gun to the head of a terrified, dark-haired woman, Sophia. Another gripped the arm of a small boy, Leo, whose face was streaked with silent tears. The third man, who had to be Varga, was holding the forged ledger, his face contorted with rage. He was a compact man with a spiderweb tattoo crawling up his neck. "The codes are wrong," Varga shouted. "The warehouse on Pier 12 has been condemned for years. You insult me with this fiction." "The records are old," Lorenzo said, his voice calm, deadly. "Assets move. The principle is the same. You have what you asked for. Now let my family go." "I asked for the key to the city," Varga screamed. "Not this children's puzzle." He threw the ledger at Lorenzo's feet. "Where is the real one?" "There is no other, that is it." Varga nodded to the man holding Sophia. The gun pressed harder against her temple. She squeezed her eyes shut. "Last chance, or I paint the floor with your wife's brains and make your son watch." Lorenzo's composure cracked. A raw, animal fear flashed across his face. He was out of moves. Jessica, hidden in the shadows above, was his last, unseen piece. She had no gun, no strength, no training. All she had was the element of surprise and the geography of the library forever in her mind. This cavernous space was just another reading room, its shelves gone, its contents emptied. But the catwalk she was on, it circled the perimeter. And directly below Varga, hanging from the ceiling by a single, rusted chain, was the remains of a giant industrial hopper, a relic of the granary's past. It was a desperate, insane idea. She looked around for a tool, a weapon. Her hand closed around a loose, heavy length of iron rebar leaning against the railing. It was about 3 feet long, solid. She hefted it. It wasn't a gun, but it was a lever. She moved, not down toward them, but along the catwalk, positioning herself directly above the chain that held the massive hopper. The chain was thick but ancient, linked to a rusted eye-bolt in the ceiling joist. Below, Varga was pulling his own gun, pointing it at Lorenzo. "Fine. We do this the hard way. We take you apart piece by piece until you talk." Jessica raised the rebar like a spear. She didn't aim for the men. She aimed for the chain's weakest point, the rusty link that hooked into the eye-bolt. With all her strength, she jammed the rebar into the link and threw her weight downward. The sound was a shrieking metallic groan. For a heart-stopping second, nothing happened. Then, with a final, deafening asterisk snap asterisk, the chain gave way. 2 tons of corroded steel plunged from the ceiling. Varga had just enough time to look up. The hopper struck the concrete floor between him and his men, not directly on them, but with the force of a bomb going off. Concrete dust exploded. The shockwave knocked everyone off their feet. The gunman holding Sophia lost his grip. The one holding Leo stumbled backward, releasing the boy. In the chaos of noise, dust, and screaming metal, Jessica acted. She sprinted down the stairs, not toward Lorenzo, but toward Leo. The boy was crouched, covering his head. She grabbed him, pulling him into her arms. It's okay, I'm a friend of your dad's," she yelled over the din. She saw Sophia scrambling away from her captor, who was dazed on the floor. Lorenzo had used the distraction to move. He was on Varga, who was struggling to rise from the debris. They grappled for the gun. A shot rang out, wild, pinging off metal. "Jessica, the door!" Lorenzo roared. She didn't need telling twice. Clutching Leo, she ran for the service entrance, Sophia right behind her. They burst out into the cool night air and didn't stop until they were around the corner, sheltered in the alley beside her car. Back inside, a second shot echoed, then a third, then silence. Jessica held Leo close, his small body shaking. Sophia stared at the granary, her hand over her mouth. Minutes later, a figure emerged from the service door, limping badly. Lorenzo. He was alone. He held a gun loosely at his side. He saw them and staggered over. He dropped to his knees, ignoring his own pain, and wrapped his arms around his son, crushing the boy to his chest. Leo sobbed into his father's shoulder. "You're safe, Piccolo, you're safe," Lorenzo murmured over and over. He looked at Sophia, a world of apology and relief in his eyes. She nodded, tears streaming. Then his gaze found Jessica. He didn't speak. He simply reached out and gripped her hand, his own bloody and trembling. The gratitude in that touch was more profound than any words. They couldn't stay. Lorenzo took the guns from the fallen men inside. He guided his family into Jessica's car. "Drive, not to the library, not to my home, to the clinic in Brookside. Dr. Armin, I'll text you the address." Jessica drove, her hands steady on the wheel. In the backseat, Leo slept, exhausted, his head in his mother's lap. Lorenzo sat beside Jessica, applying pressure to his reopened wound, his eyes on the dark road. Dr. Armin's clinic was a discreet townhouse in a quiet residential neighborhood. He was an older man with calm hands and no questions. He treated Lorenzo's wound properly, administering antibiotics and stitching him up. He gave Leo and Sophia a mild sedative and checked them over. They were unharmed, just traumatized. In the doctor's spare room, as dawn lightened the sky, the reality of their survival began to settle. Leo, awake but clingy, refused to leave Jessica's side. She sat on the couch with him, reading him a story from a book she found on a shelf. It was the most normal thing she'd done in 24 hours. Lorenzo watched from the doorway. When the boy finally fell asleep again, he gestured for Jessica to join him in the kitchen. "Varga," she asked quietly. "He won't be a problem anymore. His men who were there, also not a problem. The ones who remain will be leaderless. There will be a scramble, a power vacuum." He poured 2 glasses of water. "I intend to fill it, but differently." He slid an envelope across the table to her. Inside was a bank check, made out to her, for an amount that made her vision blur. It was more money than she would earn in 10 years at the library. "This is for you, for everything, to start over wherever you want." Jessica stared at the check. It was freedom. It was an escape from the fear, from the memories of blood on her library floor. She could disappear, but she looked at the envelope, then at the man across from her. "Is this a payoff, to forget?" "It is a thank you," he said sincerely. "And yes, it is an incentive for your silence, but not for the reason you think." He leaned forward. "The fake ledger will cause chaos in Varga's organization. I will move in, but I am not going to rebuild the same empire. That ledger, the real one you hid, it showed me the rot. I was part of it. I justified it as business. Then they took my son." He took a deep, pained breath. "I am going to dismantle it from the inside. I will take over Varga's operations and shut them down. Legitimize what can be legitimized. Burn the rest. The names in that book, they will be dealt with. Not by me, but by the authorities. I will give them the ledger." Jessica was stunned. "You turn on everyone, you go to prison." "Perhaps, but my son will be safe, and my city will be cleaner. It is the only penance that means anything." He pushed the check closer to her. "Take this. You have earned a peaceful life. You are not part of this world." She thought of the library, her books, her quiet routine. She thought of Leo's trusting eyes. She thought of the powerful, dangerous secret still hidden in her vault. She pushed the check back. "I don't want your money. I want," she searched for the words. "I want to know it's over. I want to know that the library is safe again, that no one else will ever use it as a hiding place for their wars. She met his gaze. "I'll keep your secret. I'll give you the real ledger when you're ready to use it, but I have a condition." "Name it." "You leave the library out of it. Forever. It goes back to being what it was, a sanctuary, not a fortress. And you make sure your new beginning is real. For Leo." Lorenzo Morty, the man who commanded fear with a glance, looked at the determined librarian who had saved his life and his soul, and he nodded. It was a pact. 1 week later, Jessica was back at her desk at the Charlesville Public Library. The police investigation into Leo's kidnapping had concluded with the discovery of Varga's body in the granary, a apparent fallout among thieves. It was a tidy, unsatisfying story that the city accepted with relief. Lorenzo and his family had vanished, reportedly relocating overseas. The underworld trembled as Varga's empire crumbled into infighting, with mysterious, precise leaks to federal investigators crippling several key figures. On a Tuesday evening, as Jessica was closing up, a courier delivered a small, plain package to her desk. No return address. Inside was a first edition of the Count of Monte Cristo Asterisk, a book about vengeance and rebirth. Tucked within its pages was a single, elegant key and a note. The note read, "For the new head librarian, the archives need a proper guardian, a patron." The key was for a private, climate-controlled archival trust downtown, fully funded in perpetuity. Her condition had been met, and then some. But the final surprise came a month later. Jessica was reorganizing the Beecher vault, ensuring every box was properly cataloged. In the very back, behind the box where she'd hidden the real ledger, she found a small, unmarked envelope she had never seen before. Inside was a photograph. It was a picture of her, taken years ago, sitting at this very library's reference desk, lost in a book. On the back, in familiar, precise handwriting, was a date from 3 years past, and a single line, "The only peaceful hour of my week." Lorenzo Morty had been watching her, not as a target but as a refuge, long before he ever stumbled in bleeding. Her library had been his sanctuary first, and in protecting it, she had finally truly become its guardian. The quiet was no longer just an absence of sound. It was a peace, hard-won and deeply known. And as she locked the vault that night, she knew the story that began with a crash through her doors was finally, completely over. The story of Jessica and Lorenzo Morty fades from headlines into city legend, a whispered tale about the night the library kept a secret that changed everything. But the real story isn't about a crime boss or a kidnapping. It's about the quiet spaces we take for granted, and what happens when violence stumbles into the one place built solely for peace. We build libraries as fortresses of knowledge, but we forget they are also fortresses of conscience. Between the orderly rows, under the quiet lamps, there is a clarity that the noisy world outside cannot provide. For Lorenzo, it was the only place he could see himself clearly enough to want to become someone else. For Jessica, it was the place that revealed she already was someone else, someone braver than she ever knew. The Charlesville Public Library still stands, its stone facade unchanged. Patrons come and go, unaware of the blood once washed from its floors or the secrets that remain buried in its vault. Jessica is now the head librarian. She still recommends novels and helps students with research, but she also walks the stacks with a different understanding. She knows that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision to act despite the library of fears shouting in your mind. And somewhere, under a new name in a city far away, a man reads to his son every night. The stories are different now, tales of heroes, of redemption, of starting over. The ledger, the real one, eventually found its way to a federal prosecutor's desk, delivered through anonymous, untraceable channels. Its information sparked investigations that toppled corrupt officials and dismantled criminal networks without a single shot fired. The most dangerous weapon in the city turned out not to be a gun, but a book, passed from a kingpin's hand to a librarian, and into the light. This is the final, quiet revolution of our tale. That sometimes, The person who saves us isn't a soldier or a saint, but the one who remembers how to be human when everyone else has forgotten. And the place where we find redemption might not be a church or a courtroom, but a simple room full of books, where the only thing demanded of you is silence, and the only thing offered is the chance to choose a better story. So the next time you walk into a library, listen to the quiet. It's not just an absence of sound, it's a presence. It's the collective breath of 1,000 stories waiting, of countless souls who found refuge there, and the silent, steadfast courage of the people who guard the gates. You never know what or who might be sheltering in the stillness. If you found a new perspective in this story of quiet courage, consider subscribing. There are always more stories waiting in the silence. Thanks for listening.